Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Android Design in Action. My name's Mike Denny.
Hi, I'm Nick Butcher.
And we also have two special guests with us today.
Hi, my name is Marco, and I'm an Android designer here at Google.
Hey, I'm Abhilash. I work on the Android design team with Marco. I also have this site called Android Niceties that maybe some of you use.
And we also have in New York.
Hey guys, Roman Nurik from New York, as usual.
So, Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode this year. We're going to today cover an update to the Beautiful Design collection, which is a collection of apps on Google Play that was updated just after Christmas, the end of last year. So this is a collection which Google Play uses to showcase some of the most beautiful designed apps out there, and is a really, really good source of inspiration for looking at apps which are doing some really, really great work. So we'd like to take the next 20 minutes or so to take a look at some of these apps and call out some of the individual design details which we really enjoyed from them. Two of the apps from the previous collection have stayed in the collection, so that's Pinterest and Grand Street, so we're not going to cover those today. Feel free to go back to the previous episode of Android Design in Action where we looked at those, but we are going to take a look at the other apps in the collection. So without further ado, we've got a lot of apps to get through. We're going to dive straight in. The first app that we would like to take a look at is Timely. So if you're a fan of Android Design in Action, you've probably heard us talk about this a couple of times. So I'm going to be very brief with this application, but essentially it's beautiful. It really defines a kind of a really high level of polish and subtle animations that just really show that a lot of thought went into this application. So I think, Mike, you talked about this in a previous episode. When I think one of your favorite interactions is simple things like setting a timer is this very, very kind of visceral and enjoyable interaction. Things like if I want to set an alarm, instead of controlling knobs and levers, I just kind of swipe out from the edge. There we go. Yeah. And I can just tap up and down to finally adjust it and so on. Everything is a kind of a direct manipulation kind of interaction, which kind of speaks to some of the design principles that it's much more fun to kind of directly control stuff than to kind of control these knobs and levers. And again, it's just polish, polish, polish. Anyone else have any thoughts on Timely?
I think another thing about this application is that you don't have any jump cut. All the transitions, they go from one point to another. I think particularly this is my favorite, is how the number zooms into positions and back really, really nicely. Nothing, all the scenes, they have a transition between each other. The interaction feels a continuous thing rather than broken into different screens.
It's almost like a game or a movie, right? In the fact that everything just kind of seamlessly transitions between things rather than a series of kind of like individual screens.
More
which
than
you
a
transition.
storyboard, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think even like when you're counting down and you're starting a timer and like each of the seconds come out as you go past them instead of like a little finger or dial moving past them, there's like lots of little touches like that that are pretty amazing.
And we don't have to forget, the transition across the numbers.
Oh yeah,
that is
the tweening.
that is a pretty cool transition. And it's great that people are playing with those things.
Yeah. Great. So once again, love the app. Next up, I think Roman, you wanted to take a look at Circa.
Yeah, so Circa is basically it's a newsreader app, right? I mean, they actually, I think the company provides its own news, or they edit their own articles. But at the heart of it, it's a newsreader app. It has just a handful of topics. It's very highly curated. So the content itself speaks volumes about the app and the company. They're really crafting the content for I guess kind of almost like micro news consumption. So on top of the visual awesomeness of the app, it's very simple. I guess there's very little chrome in the app. It's really the content, the images, the photos that really stand out, and the type as well. Beyond all of that, there's one thing that I really wanted to talk about, and that's when you look into or when you open an article, the way in which you interact and consume the article is very novel. Basically, instead of just scrolling vertically through a long list of paragraphs and images and things like that, they actually take each point, each individual, I guess point of the news, and they make that into a single, little like card type thing. It's a little object, right? And you flick vertically, you page vertically between these individual points. So consuming the news is actually very fun and very quick. You can kind of flick through to see what's interesting. If there's a map or a photo, it kind of takes up the majority of the space in that little, I guess, point in that little card. And it's really kind of consuming news at your own pace, and I just really love the interaction. Also, there's a little kind of a scrubber at the right. You can kind of scrub along the right side of that, I guess, that scroll bar thing, and you can quickly kind of flip through the different news sections. So those are my favorite aspects. Do you guys have any other points about Circa?
Just to follow up on the point that you just made about the kind of digestible scrolling format, I've actually been staying up to date more on the news by using Circa than looking at news from other sources, just because it definitely caters to the skimming kind of reading, where it's just tiny chunks at a time. So it's great when an app actually changes your day-to-day, where you're more informed.
Mm-hmm.
I also quite like the information density they use on the kind of the home screen. They're kind of unashamedly using lots of space per story rather than trying to cram in the most number of stories per screen, and they also don't present a ton of stories per day. So all in all, their design conveys to me that they've selected the most important things, and these are important things which you should pay attention to and read to. So like you say, it makes it very easy to scan a day's news, and it kind of communicates that to me through their design.
There's one more aspect that I like to have people to look at, which is typography. So it starts from the Circa logo in itself, which is just a typographic logo. It's also interesting how in the main view you see the whole logo, but when you get into different sources, they use a different glyph, which is really interesting. And obviously, you will recognize this is not a bottle light. And I think applications that can play with fonts and have different type of typography will enrich our platform. I'm obviously a fan of Roboto, but it's good to see other fonts out there. Also interesting how they use words together with icons, as we do in our platform in the action bar. But even there, they use a different typography, which makes this application feel very distinct.
Yeah. So we love Circa, and I think the next app we want to talk about is Airbnb.
Yeah.
So Airbnb obviously is an app for the. It's not really couch surfing. It's the best way to explain it, if you don't know about Airbnb already, is finding traveling rental people renting out properties that they have for smaller chunks as competition to other forms of travel housing like hotels. So the thing that stands out immediately to me about the Airbnb app is the use of photos, and that they're really utilizing the visual style of Android, which is to show full bleed photos. So the Chrome kind of fades away. It's just about the spaces. And here we can just tap into a little bit more of a detailed view. But even if you want to just scroll through, they have this horizontal paging within a given property, so that you don't have to leave the full list. It's really allows for a simple browsing experience to find the place that you want to stay.
And this really speaks about the philosophy of Airbnb in itself, which is a company that have invested tremendously in design, and particularly have been sending professional photographers to people who are renting their places in order to make that experience better, because everything starts from looking at the photos on where you're going to be staying. And the AI really reflects their philosophy by focusing so much on photos, and even just little things like this little snappy way to go through photos real quickly, and obviously it carries through in the full screen view. It's super important. You don't know how important it is doing that kind of moving towards that kind of interaction versus having a typical, maybe obsolete gallery where you have to keep on going back and forth between the photos that are provided to you. That makes the whole difference.
Yeah, I think the other thing for me, like as someone that's used Airbnb quite a lot, is how functional and featured this app is. Like, I thought you could just browse listings, make a booking, but you can create a listing so easily. It kind of makes sense. Like, you have your mobile device, you choose your number of rooms, you take photos. It does it really nicely. So I feel like there's a lot of screens that they've put a lot of effort into designing well. So that's the other thing that stood out for me.
Yeah, even the dialogues with the renters and all the chat system feels almost like it could have been an application in itself by how beautifully it's designed and by the level of details that they have, like the profiles of the host. Everything is very, very well curated. You feel welcome in that application.
So moving on, the next app that we would like to cover is a heart rate monitor from Runtastic. So this is an excellent example of what we're always talking about in Android design in action, is to take the Hollow design language and use that as your starting point and really kind of bring your own personality and your own branding to the equation. So I think they've done an excellent job of interpreting the raw kind of Hollow design language and doing that. So simple things like the way they've recolored a bunch of elements, the use of like the typographic styles we commonly use, like the block capitals, when to use some like kind of roboto light or larger set text to bring emphasis to certain elements. I think they've done a really, really nice job of doing that. The one screen I would like to call out as being extremely beautiful is kind of the hero screen of the application, which is when you're actually using the application to measure your heartbeat. So if you haven't used the app, it's pretty innovative, really. It actually fires up your camera and the flashlight on the back of your phone, and actually kind of shines the light through your finger and measures the difference in color to actually measure the heart rate, which is pretty innovative. But if we look at it now, when it's doing that, it uses this kind of beautiful kind of blur effect to kind of indicate when it's picked up your heartbeat, and you have this live graph going along the bottom, which will show you, kind of give you instant response that it's doing something, that's trying to find it. And it's just a really, really beautifully well kind of designed experience to communicate what it's doing, which is pretty novel. There we go. We have a bit of a problem with the demo device. So that was Heart Rate Pro. Don't know if anyone has anything to add?
Just a little simple thing. Even the dialogues are personalized. They have like a strong red color on top of dialogues. I think they use all caps. They use the font, with a different size, different from the very typical out-of-the-box dialogue framework that we have. And I think it's something that we invite developers to play with, as long as the interaction will be the same. It feels novel, but it doesn't feel completely different from everything we do in our platform.
Yeah, it feels completely native Android, but it feels completely Runtastic at the same time, right? It's that good marriage of both.
Yeah, definitely. So the next app that we want to talk about is called the Whole Pantry. And we've already talked about the importance of high quality photos and photography and the impact that can make on your app, obviously depending on the kind of app. But for the Whole Pantry, they use beautiful photos to really sell the entire purpose of their app, which is to present a very holistic approach, nutrition, lifestyle. They've got recipes, they have health guides, they have recommended products and services. And it's we can drill in here and look at macadamia and caramel cheesecake. The photos are very high resolution. I think the app itself is like a 75 megabyte download. So it's definitely in the forefront of the app presentation.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough how much important having the right resolution for assets and for photos is. I think the Whole Pantry on a tablet like an Nexus 10 really defines a beautiful experience because the photos are so much high res. And unfortunately, something we don't see enough out there because data is expensive, etc., etc. But when you see it, you know that it is important. So I'm actually very much looking forward in seeing bandwidth getting faster and seeing more and more high resolution photos, even at large form factor, because it defines the experience in a whole new level.
Yeah, I think for me, like I've tried a few of these recipe apps. Not that I cook or anything, but like they've put a lot of effort into curating it, and they've slowly released updates to recipes. So you can see with the recipes they have, there's there's nothing that looks broken. Every photo is amazing. Like the ingredients, the instructions, they're all nicely done. So it doesn't rely on trying to render something from a janky website. They've kind of tried to keep it within the app, and
it's basically food porn. It's just like everything looks amazing in it. Yeah.
And even here, like we saw in Circa, I'd like to make people pay attention to the different font style in the action bar, which really there's those small differences that will make your application different from the rest. And Circa had a different font. The Whole Pantry has this italic serif type of font. It really makes the application stand out with a very simple change. You don't have to do a custom action bar and go crazy with things. You just need to curate your application with very small details, and it already stands out from the crowd.
Yeah, so the next app that we want to talk about is Tumblr.
Yeah, so the thing about Tumblr, I mean, Tumblr in itself, I think everybody knows what Tumblr is. It's kind of like a blogging, micro-blogging platform, I guess. The thing I want to focus on for Tumblr, the app itself, is not so much the actual experience of using Tumblr, but it's the onboarding, the first time you run the app. And we had a whole episode of Android Design in Action just on this. Because it's so very important, you know, when you get featured on Google Play or when you're in a collection like the Beautiful Design Collection, a lot of people are just discovering your brand and they're coming to your app and just kind of getting a feel for what it is. So you don't want to throw up a login now or a register now type dialogue. You want to give them a taste of what they're going to get when they sign up, if they sign up. And so Tumblr does this brilliantly. They go above and beyond. I mean, you can obviously, you know, view public Tumblr content in the app. I guess in the Explore tab, but you can even start following. You can even start personalizing the app before you even have an account. Obviously, you know, once you follow more than 10, I guess Tumblr blogs, they'll say, hey, you know, you probably should start, you know, saving this somewhere because, you know, this is just kind of stored locally. And as soon as you, I guess, sign in or sign up, they actually kind of add that to your account. So it's just done very brilliantly. Besides that, obviously, the UI is very clean. Again, the content stands out. The Chrome is it's almost transparent. I mean, it's there. There are the icons there and the text. But it's really the content that stands out. But to me, the number one thing in this app is the amazing onboarding experience.
Yeah, I mean, even there's like a few little nice animations, like when you follow something for the first time and in the Explore tab and it flies into your Home tab, like, it's just a nice little indication. The pull to refresh, even like how the radial menu comes out. Yeah, there's quite a few nice touches in there.
Okay, so the next app that we would like to talk about is Umano. So Umano is a kind of news consumption application, but it's kind of different to Circa and other standard ones, and it's all orientated around listening to the news, having the news read out to you, spoken to you. So one of the things I very much like about this application is they have quite a complex information hierarchy, but it's kind of expressed very, very clearly using some very familiar Android patterns. So they kind of use the drawer for kind of the major kind of organizational tasks, as it were. But they also have this kind of like partial width and swipeable tabs to allow you to kind of filter down by categories and really kind of find the content you're looking for. Another interaction which I really like is they've kind of learned from the best, as it were, and they've kind of done a very similar implementation to the Google Play Music to allow you to kind of see what you're currently listening to while navigating around to find the next story you might want to listen to. So here at the bottom I have my kind of now playing drawer, and I can drag it up or just tap on it and quickly get back to the current story which is now playing, so I can quickly go and you know, rewind a minute or add it to like a favorite playlist or something like that. And it works very nicely. You can see as you drag up, it just kind of replaces the content behind it and acts as similar to the action bar.
Yeah, it's beautiful how the action bar moves away together with the sort of parallax effect as this sort of view is coming up. It's a very, very nice detail.
And one of the main use cases of this app is to listen to the news during your commute, right? So they've actually added something particular to for use in the car.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, basically when you're listening to something and you, when it starts playing, you can switch into car mode by tapping the car icon, and they've just done like a beautiful job of presenting a UI that's very touch friendly when you don't have a lot of attention. There's a nice overlay, there's a remote control view there. Yeah, it's just like a nice touch.
Hit buttons, yeah.
Very easy to hit buttons while driving, yeah.
Yeah, even they use the new framework from KitKat where the view goes full screen, and how it fades in and out is really, really well done. I mean, this is an application that tries to make something that we got used to, which is hearing things be read out loud by our machines, but it makes it more human, bringing human beings back into the game. So obviously there is a focus in design and humanity, if you wish, across the app, visually and even from the audio perspective.
And a slight aside for developers, I know that they've open sourced their kind of drag up panel implementation as well. So if you have a similar kind of interaction, then you might want to look at that.
Awesome. So the next app that we wanted to talk about is perhaps slightly controversial. I know that when the app was first released, there was a flurry of discussion about it, and that is Yahoo Weather.
Yeah, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the awesome details in Yahoo Weather. Now, I mean, again, all of these apps are not without their flaws, but here we really want to highlight some of the best details. So Yahoo Weather, when you first open it up, I mean, it just shows you obviously the weather near where you are. Now, front and center, I guess back and center, is a photo, and this photo is actually highly contextual. The photo is not only about the or of the current weather type, whether it be sunny or rainy, but it's also contextual in the sense that it shows you the location. So I think that if you're in like London and it's super sunny, it'll show you London when it's sunny, but if it's super rainy, they'll show you. Yeah.
There's a photo from 1930.
But the idea is that, I mean, it's highly contextual, so it actually gets you a pretty good feel of what it may actually look like outside. Now, you know, in terms of the UI itself, if you have multiple locations set up, you can swipe left and right, obviously, between, you know, your current location and your predetermined locations, and there's a nice parallax effect that actually where the background image actually scrolls at a slower rate, and it kind of transitions neatly into the next image from the next location. But within a specific location, as you start scrolling down, that background image actually starts to blur. And this blur is so that you can actually focus on the information that's in the foreground, things like the forecast and the details of the weather. And then if you scroll down to the very bottom, this is probably my favorite detail in this app, you get to these really awesome animations of wind and sunlight. And it's these really small little touches that really kind of set this app apart from other weather apps. So I really like, you know, a lot of these different touches in there. Those are some of my favorite elements.
One of my favorite things as well is as you're scrolling down to see some of the kind of more detailed information, I love that it synchronizes the scroll position so that if you swipe horizontally, you can easily compare two locations. So you're trying to like decide, I want to go to either, you know, city X or Y this weekend. You can scroll down to kind of the you know, long range forecast and easily kind of like pan between them and have these kind of comparisons really, really simply. Little details like that just show so much thought's gone into that.
Yeah, it really shows how, you know, design follows functions after all, and all these details we have seen, they're not just thought to make the application more beautiful, but even more functional, and they create a story that is understandable. To those details that Roman was talking about, you know, those little animation at the bottom. Also, when you pull it down, you have this pull to refresh. They have this little sun spinning around. So a lot of little playful elements that they embed in the application that makes it fun and surprising.
Yeah, so we definitely love the Yahoo Weather app. Speaking of visual design when compared to interaction design, the next app that we want to talk about is Etsy, where it's just a gorgeous app that screams their own brand. It very loudly has a voice, and it's interesting because visually you might not recognize Android glyphs or icons. They've got a lot of custom things. But the interaction design, the design patterns for navigation throughout the app are very consistent with platform standards, and that means that users will instantly feel at home using the app while still being exposed to Etsy's brand.
Yeah, I think Marco mentioned earlier dialogues, and again, Etsy, the custom dialogues they use I really like. And the other thing I liked is the purchase flow. I feel like a lot of apps, like once you get into the purchase flow, they kind of get into web views, or they're not as well done, but these guys, again, have paid a lot of attention to the purchase flow through the app, which is important. So.
For us, it's amazing how when we define certain rules for the UI, like the new side drawer and other things like that, how good developers and good designers, they go above and beyond to play with that simple rule, but to make it special. We haven't seen it before on Airbnb, but if you pay attention, when you bring the side drawer in, your view sort of zooms back. And if you look into Etsy instead, when you pull the drawer in, the view fades. So there are a lot of little effects, and again, it's what I was saying before, just changing the font in your action bar by keeping the action bar as it is from an interaction point of view, or changing the effects when the drawer comes in, is enough to really distinguish your application from the rest of the crowd. In this case, Etsy also made their side navigation to be very colorful. Also here to be noticed, the different font treatment for the side drawer, for the action bar as well. A lot of elements that I invite everybody to play with.
And we're not showing it right here, but this app also is beautifully responsive. So if you try it on all manner of different size and shape devices, they use this very flexible staggered grid layout, which they kind of change between different columns and so on, just to maintain the same aspect ratio, but to fill up the space beautifully. So they make, while they do maintain great use of white space and so on, they kind of like really just fill up the available room to kind of make the most on other devices, so you don't get this stretched experience.
Have they open sourced that
And
as well?
open source that staggered grid for you as well.
If I remember correctly, even the dialogues, they bring a nice surprise to the experience. They don't simply pop, they don't simply fade in the middle of the screen. They actually come from the bottom of the screen, and it just creates more of a metaphor about where these dialogues are coming from, and it's definitely a nice touch.
Definitely. So this has been a look at the Winter 2013 Beautiful Design Collection. We hope you enjoyed watching it, and until next time, I'm Mike Denny.
Bye from me, Nick Butcher.
Bye, this is Marco. See you next time.
See ya, it's Abhilash.
And see you guys later from New York. It's Roman.